OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as low. Run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I make that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. Lil' mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with Dizzy. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang, taking that Zach to the bank. And it be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that shit change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a Rari, this is my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
Your attention, please. Please do not smoke in the terminal building. Smoking is only permitted in the specified smoking areas.
Zach. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as low. Run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I make that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. Lil' mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with Dizzy. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang, bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that shit change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a Robert, this is my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang.
Two fucking bars, nigga.
Whoa. Is that?
Hey, what up?
They know my campaign. Now they running up on Roddy like it's second place. They wanna know if I'm a prop or I'm the real plane. Landed in Austin and I even brought my own strain. Gang, yeah, fuck is they talking about? Link up with Freddie, got it booming cause it's Mo South. Then we hit the spot, my OG had it packed out. Getting love in every city, what it's all about. Facts, yeah, know when I'm back home. At the blueprint eating chicken with some bad Jones. And they bad, but not like the one that's at home. And she bad, but not like them kids we have, Lord, yeah. I'm still up in my mode. Hit my connect, he make the close, I run the give and go. Just ask the ones who fucking with me if you didn't know. They say the plane was always on it and he always gone. I love you, I want to. You're the one that I live for. I can't take it anymore, but I love you. I need you. What can I do to make you see? You're the only one for me. I told Jay I'ma just stick to the code. He wished me well and told me how he been noticing growth. Told all my niggas down on Serato, let's get this dough. Figure of speech, I'm just saying my niggas gotta glow. Yeah, I thought I changed up, but in fact I just got better at the same stuff. Even when I was a minor, I was major. Independent, I remember how they played us. Yeah, you see it's funny though. See how everything changed, getting money, bro. Seen them even throwing shade when it's sunny though. On the plane, I ain't even in a lane though. Yeah, but I still be on the road. Head to toe on all my merch, I'm smoking at the shop. And they booking Henny too, I gotta bring my bro. Wonder if and when I stop, I tell them never know. I love you, I want you. You're the one that I live for. I can't take it anymore, but I love you, I need you. What can I do to make you see? You're the only one for me. I love you, I miss you, I need you in my life. Can't you see what you mean to me? Baby, come hold me tight.
I don't know, where was it? Where was it? I think it's in here.
Jones, and they bad, but not like the one that's at home. And she bad, but not like them kids we have, Lord, yeah. I'm still up in my mode. Hit my connect, he make the close, I run the give and go. Just ask the ones who fucking with me if you didn't know. They say the plane was always on it and he always gone. I love you, I want to.
It's in the Serato.
You're the one that I do.
Two fucking bars. I'm gonna tell y'all later. It's a shot of the it's a beautiful shot of the front of the Prudential.
He been noticing growth. Told all my niggas down on Serato, let's get this dough. Figure of speech, I'm just saying my niggas gotta glow. Yeah, I thought I changed up, but in fact I just got better at the same stuff. Even when I was a minor, I was major. Independent, I remember how they played us. Yeah, you see it's funny though. See how everything changed, getting money, bro.
So many
See them even.
That's outside the man. I'm gonna have OG Roddy go through this with me, man, and we're gonna break down all the locations, man. We're gonna have to break down all the locations. All right, y'all, we back. Lina's up here with me. Lina, can you hear me? Uh-oh. I don't know if Lina can hear me. Oh, there you go. Hey, Lina.
Sorry, Jay, I was,
You hit your
I was
pipe?
taking a hit.
No
Cheers.
worries. Cheers. So hang on. There's a clip that Cameron put in the chat. Let me play this.
Have the desire to do evil. And so everyone has free will and they just don't want to do evil. And you ask them, like, could you do evil? And they're like, well, yeah, I could do evil, like in principle, but I have absolutely no desire to do so. And so you have a state of affairs where in the world, everyone has free will, but nobody ever does evil.
And so that's what I think it's going to be like in God's kingdom. I still think people will have free will, although I can't be certain about this, but I still think people will have free will. It's just they won't ever want to. It'll be like eating the rotten garbage. So why isn't it like that now?
Exactly.
Yes. That is I can only give you the spiritual answer to that. I can't give you a philosophically satisfying answer.
I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Can you see why I don't believe, though? So, like, I understand, and I think it's great that you're not trying to, like, just make people never have the desire to do evil. And so everyone has free will, and they just don't want to do evil. And you ask them, like, could you do evil? And they're like, well, yeah, I could.
Wait.
I could.
What I'm just curious what her spiritual answer is.
I don't know.
Other than God acts in delirious ways.
The Lord acts in delirious ways. That's all. That's all she's got, right? All she's got is he has to preserve our free will. Then when we get to heaven, because we had pure hearts that didn't want to do evil, then we're in the state where we just won't ever desire to do evil because now we've been purified by. it just never.
Yeah, and I hear some Christians. They eventually reason the same way that I hear a lot of Hindus reason, which is that it's for the experience. And to that I just say, okay, then you're just admitting that God's evil, right? He's just the author of evil. He's doing it for the purpose of evil, for the experience of things that are not perfect, right?
Yeah,
that's the reason why we're doing this. Then, right? Is for the pain, for the experience of it, and it's just then you're just a pain apologist at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really bad. I mean, and at that point, you're also dealing with somebody who's just arguing their way into being right. Like, I hate to say it, Christianity has
that
the
too.
one
Yeah, you're ad hocking all the way.
Like, it just can't be wrong. Like, and it just gets to. I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm sort of a very proud counter apologist. I mean, I feel like through counter apologetics, I'm doing with what I should have been doing with evangelism, right?
We have a powerful cumulative case.
Finally, like trying to help people find the truth, and
you're shining a light like you've always planned on doing.
yeah, exactly. It's just like, dude, this is not how honest people reason together, right? This is not how we should act when we come together to think cohesively, right? We should not start with, well, I get the special plead and ad hoc makeup stuff.
Yeah, I think she's gonna use this. I think she's gonna use free will for defense of her nonsense plenty more times. I don't think this is the last we're gonna hear of Rebecca and free will.
Fortunately, this was just a 1 minute clip that somebody chopped out for us. So that was but yeah, I wanted to
How
follow
old is
up.
that?
It's a follow up on a free will after show 5 days ago. So this is from the return. This is Rebecca 2.0.
And she had Lance on. That's nice. I like
I think Lance had her on like I guess what happened
was Lance have a channel we can shout out?
That's what they did. What they did was they started it on Rebecca's channel and then they did like the after show on Lance's basically.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely go sub.
It's new. It's new. Lance Independent. I think this is the first thing on it actually. I think it's a new channel.
Yeah, that's a great little clip. And that's the.
I mean, and guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna say something gross here. I'm gonna say something gross here that people are not gonna like, but the proof is in front of you. This is so gross, gang. This is so gross. But like Rebecca did Lance a solid. Rebecca, for all of her flaws, you know, let's look it up. All right. Rebecca Davis has almost 7,000 subscribers on her main channel, and I think a couple thousand maybe on Examining Evolution. Only 313. All right, so yeah, that's the super small one. All right, and then so Rebecca like did Lance a solid, and it really does speak to how selfish other content creators are. I'm gonna just put it to you like that, you know, because there's people like Derek and Neil that really will try to help smaller content creators grow, and then there's fuckfaces like Doug that will just never ever do a solid for smaller channels, and it makes a difference. Like Lina, like it doesn't bother me when somebody won't go out of their way for me because they're not obligated to, right? But it did bother me if someone's going to call me their friend and then like not do something like that could help me. Because I'll just put it to you like this. If Doug gave a shit originally, we'd have been over 1,000 subscribers a very long time ago. Right? Like two shout outs from Doug would have just taken care of it. Like it would have been done. But he just is a selfish fuck.
Yeah.
And Lance, this is Lance's first video.
He's on the other side, so
yeah, exactly. This is Lance's first video, and he's got over 100 subs. That's the Rebecca.
Yeah, I should actually.
That's the Rebecca effect.
Because I should add, as part of my email, I didn't just insult her. I also complimented her because I told her that she's the only channel I know of that does the sort of outreach that she does.
Yeah. Like, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. It's no
right. I thought a lot about like.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what got us all.
And right? How many?
Lina, you're coming in and out a little bit. You might just be
Well, I was. I'm sorry.
It just looks like your connection's not that strong right now. Let me see.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Testing.
Yeah. It's fine right now. Yeah.
I'm just a bit delayed.
It's fine. No worries.
What I was gonna say is, I think about the Christian community and I think about how many of them are doing outreach towards atheists specifically, and it's like none of them. And so I applauded Rebecca for I know of that specifically, not that she intended to do that, but that it ended up being this community of atheists mostly, or at least that's how it felt. And that's how it felt like her content ended up being targeted towards, was this heavily into the apologetics. And I told her I appreciated that, and then more people should appreciate that, but also that she was a grifter.
Yeah. Wow.
And so she was insulted. So.
Yeah, that's frustrating. So. Yeah, so she did do, yeah, so that's weird. It's weird. Like, and again, that's part of the whole deal, right? It's that little bit of unselfishness. Because I was just being honest. Like, even getting from 0 to 100 subs is no small feat. And it definitely really helps when somebody with a larger channel really makes the effort to promote your stuff and then goes on there so that their appearance is a reason for people to go to your channel and a sub. It was a big deal when she came on Hot Program. It was probably one of our most popular episodes to that point. So yeah, that's I'll give her credit for that too. But again, it's all severely undermined by the grift, by the fact that even in that conversation with Lance, she's not getting it. She's not making a genuine attempt to listen. She's doing what we all know Rebecca to do: sit there, nod, half smile, wait for a chance to get in there. When she gets in there, completely derail the conversation or take it off to a non sequitur. So at that point, it starts to piss you off even more because it's the person sugarcoating the poison pill. And I don't like my poison sugar-coated. So it's tough. I feel bad too about like the gift, man. That's real deep, Lina. That's a lot. That's a lot. That is a lot.
Well, and it's gonna speak to not just how I interact with Rebecca going forward, but how I deal with interacting with this church. Because it's something that you said about how we should be going to church. And so I'm gonna take your command in stride and do this enthusiastically, but I've got a lot of anxiety about it, and it's something I want to do because I want to be the light of reason. But I just know that there's gonna be a lot of that sugar-coated awfulness, and it's gonna be impossible to point it out for a lot of the people that I'm going to end up interacting with, and it's it just sucks that there's one opening up, another one. It's as if we didn't need another church.
Yeah,
in our area.
I've always been or tried to be clear with people that you got to take care of yourself. So I don't recommend people do that unless they think they can, safely for themselves. Some days are harder than others.
And I can.
Yeah,
and I've done it before.
Yeah. You've got to. Yeah, I don't want to put people out there that really that are going to be damaged by that additional exposure. I do. Lena, I got to be honest with you. It feels like an admission of weakness. Or strength through weakness or something, because it felt like I was admitting to myself that, that I can't afford to ignore them the way they can afford to ignore us. And, I do, that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, but that was kind of like a thing. I was like, look, these they're not going anywhere. Like they really do build up their worlds. And like you said, they're like expanding and they're recruiting and they can insulate their lives from other people, right? They can, shop at the village center and they hire each other, and it's a really deep echo chamber. So yeah, I'm excited to hear more people are getting in there, and you just got to know what you sign up for. There is some genuineness to a lot of the people that you can enjoy. Most of the people don't know any better. So, you can kind of enjoy your time with them, enjoy your meals with them. It's all good. And then you pick and choose when you can have the deeper conversations. The situation with Rebecca, I think, even speaks to a deeper problem in our society, and maybe that's part of the whole picture that Rebecca doesn't get. Like, for instance, I used to think that her having like an atheist of the month was cool. Like, I used to think that was super cool, to give like a gift card or whatever to an atheist or a plaque or whatever it is. You know, it was one of those things that reminded me like Rebecca's a better streamer than a lot of people on YouTube, because that's something people on Twitch do a lot, where streamers generally are expected to be a little bit better at streaming, quite frankly. You know, like I used to do monthly giveaways with pocket change for first, second, and third, and they came with different perks. And that's just stuff that's more expected, and like nobody on YouTube does any of that shit. And then you see Rebecca doing it, and you're like, oh, she's pretty like good at this. Like she's got her shit together as far as her streaming is concerned. But now that I see how dishonest she is in her dialogues and her discourse, it feels very cultish now. Again, it feels like paying off certain people, like, oh, I really like so-and-so, I love so-and-so support, really thankful for so-and-so. And then you're just dismissive of what these people are actually trying to tell you. It's like, I really feel strongly that Rebecca lied to me. Now, I'm not stunned by that, because I think Rebecca's a liar. And when Rebecca said certain things to me, I thought she was lying. Right? But, you know, she got up on the stream, and because she wanted to save face, she said she felt bad about being so dismissive of evolution, and she apologized because she realizes now that she is, you know, why scientists would say that they're personally insulted, like why it's personally disrespectful. I said, it's dehumanizing. My exact language was, you don't have to call me a nigger to call me a nigger, right? The problem, the reason the word nigger is a problem is because it dehumanizes people. So what good is it to say, I won't call you a nigger, Jay, but just turn around and dehumanize me? And if you literally reject people's life's work and their discipline and their expertise because it doesn't fit your personal fairy tale narrative, guess what? That's dehumanizing as shit. You're literally saying, oh, I don't care what you did. It's like the example I gave. Like, you know, it's like you work on a fucking greenhouse for somebody. You build up a atrium for them. It's got fucking trees and shrubs and flowers and tall grasses and all types of shit. And you take them out to it and you blindfold them and you unveil, and they look around and they go, I don't see any plants here. I don't see any, like, right? Like they're literally just pretending like they don't see your work. Like, hello, has this bitch heard anything about what's going on in professional environments?
Yeah.
Like that.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So she said, she sat up there.
And you're justified.
Yeah. So she said like that she felt really bad about that. Then she went on her stream and said she felt really bad about that. And it wasn't just me. She said like Professor Dan and Erica and all these like professionals had taken all this time to like try to put her on, and she realizes like they're gonna personally be upset if you don't take this shit seriously. So she said she was gonna reconsider how strongly she comes out against evolution and all this stuff. And of course, like she was right. She was still on it after that, and she went away. And everyone's holding on to just this dash of hope that maybe she's doing some reflecting. And she comes back, and basically the first thing she's talking about is, oh, I'm more motivated than ever to speak out about evolution. And, you know, yesterday she was telling her brother how ridiculous he is. How could my own brother believe in something so ridiculous? And I mean, it's just... So she just was lying. She was just doing what Christians do, which is to say the right thing. And that's another problem of their whole worldview, is that it's all about what you say. Like the way we deal with most Christians, if you really look at them when you're talking to them even, most of us who are really honest, you can tell when you're having a conversation with somebody, like when you are talking to somebody and they're really listening to you, and then you say something and it lands and they kind of take a moment and integrate it in, think about it, and then, you know, spit back some reflection of, you know, where the conversation is heading. I think if y'all are honest, you have sat there and watched hours of Rebecca, and you can just tell by her body language that she's not listening, because you've had so many of these conversations with your own friends and family, and you know what it looks like when someone is just sitting there thinking of what to say next to undermine what you're saying. And you can just tell. You can just, I'm a teacher. Like, I can tell. We can tell immediately when students are trying to like get one over on us and come up with the fucking story versus when somebody's genuinely had a hard time or genuinely gone through something and they tell you. It's so obvious. And so it's just kind of baffles me that I guess that she's still getting away with this. But my point is, it really makes all of the... Lina, I think you've talked about this, right? How they have to do you like a little favor or something in hopes that you'll grant them something much bigger down the road or something like that. Was that you or James?
I'm not sure if I spoke about it. That might have been James.
Might have been James, but yeah,
I don't know.
So yeah, there's just a lot of that. It really does bother me. So and maybe we'll talk more about it not on this stream, but I was gonna do a stream on this anyway because I really feel like it needs to be called out in our neighborhood, because I think part of the problem I see in our community is that, quite frankly, we're just too nice. And there's a dangerous combination going on here where we have like kind of a really unique vibe that's interesting and like attractive to people because, you know, people in our community tend to take a actual interpersonal interest in one another. And so naturally people want to be a part of that. And then we're trying to be welcoming and then people want to be part of that. But at the same time, we're dealing with cult motherfuckers. And these cult motherfuckers, especially the ones that are still in the fucking cult, are coming around here acting like it's just another church grift, just another Christian cult. So what they do is they're like trying to love bomb hate watch, if that makes any sense. Oh, I'm so excited to sub to this new person. Oh, I love to, you know, tune into so-and-so stream every day. And they're trying to make you feel like we're like Lupin does this all the time, right? Where like he just wants to be friends, he wants to be buds, he wants to be cool, but everything out of his mouth is the most weaponized horseshit ever. So he wants to be buddy with the black friend, but doesn't want to change his worldview according to having actual black friends, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. And so then what happens is it's like our community gets taken advantage of because essentially people can show up with a smile, you know, warm smile, firm handshake, peace and respect, Richard Madsen bow, and then just get away with fucking toxic behavior literally for months on end. And I'm just like real sick of it. And I'm just like, no, like you shouldn't be reaping the benefits of this community without meeting the standard of behavior. Sorry, go ahead. You said they're doing what?
My connection.
No, it's all right. Sorry.
My connection's cutting again. Oh, it's okay. Okay. Yeah, I feel like they're winning this publicity battle.
Yeah, and I think I think they should, and I think they just should.
Isn't as good?
I think they just should. Otherwise, we end up being MSNBC. Because I think what happens is it's like the same thing you see in politics, right? It's like the right's fucking gonzo, crazy horseshit off the reservation. So then at some point, the left is like, yo, we just have to oppose them. They're literally derelict of duty. They're not even paying attention. They're fucking children. Sorry, they're not even part of the conversation anymore. And everyone's like, well, you stop being so divisive. Why are you being so unreasonable? You're being so mean. Why don't you be so nice? Fuck that. Fuck all of that. No, like they surrendered. They gave that shit up. They forfeited that. They forfeited that shit. Right? They forfeited that shit. What's up? Like that's how this works. Like there's standards. I mean, you don't meet it. You don't get the bennies no more. That's how it is. Like you don't get to kick me in the junk and then I'm going down on you. No, you lost your friends with benefit status when you decided that you didn't know how to not harm other people with your body. Like it's just like I don't understand so for me it's like, at least for me, I got to understand too, like, I'm just at a different place psychologically where I hate to say this, I'm very willing to be mean to people. I'm tired of being nice to people. I really am. I feel like Uncle Bobby. Uncle Bobby was a very big kid growing up, right? And I had to be much bigger than kids around me, kind of like socially and emotionally growing up. And the result is you're always being told to look out for everybody else. And yeah, I know the way those, for Uncle Bobby, it's like, I know the way those 3 and 4 kids ganged up on you really sucked, but you are bigger than them. So you just got to understand where they're coming from, right? Instead of being like, yeah, sorry, Bobby, like, doesn't matter how big you are, kids shouldn't gang up on you because that's not how the game works. Right? And yeah, sorry, Jay, it's really shitty. Those kids shouldn't be shitty to you because you're the only black kid in their school, but this is life, right? And so you just get to a point where you've just been beaten down and it's like, I'm retired. Like I'm retired from putting other people's needs before mine. Like I get to retire early because of time served. I know a lot of people, y'all were shitty as kids. You were shitty teenagers. You were probably shitty young adults. And you didn't realize till you were in your mid-30s that other people existed and that you had to consider their needs and feelings once in a while. And so now that shit's new to you. And you're just like, oh my God, this empathy and sympathy and looking out for others, this is so wonderful. That shit brand new to y'all. Now I'm over that shit. Nope. I put my 20 years in. I'm retired. I'm done. It's shitty. The pay sucked and the benefits were worse. So from now on, it's like I look out for my community, and that's the people that's, we all looking out for each other. And if you're not participating in that mutual love and support relationship, then I'm literally trying to violently eject you from this community as soon as possible. And if you're one of our detractors that's in the neighborhood, like a Rebecca or a Sal or, Otangelo or whoever else, I'm trying to make you feel unwelcome. I'm trying to be like white folks when like your lawn is unkempt. You know what I'm saying? That's how we're gonna think about this. When you're progressive and critical thinking, when you're like us, basically, those are the people with the nice houses and all our lawns look nice and our property value is going up and our public schools are awesome because our kids are learning fucking critical thinking and science and they're all scoring off the charts and everybody's going to college and we're just creating this little wonderful little fucking neighborhood, right? And here come these fuck faces as soon as they saw our property value on the rise and we was getting a little diversity, little fucking metropolitan vibes and all of that shit in our place. All of a sudden here they come with this Jesus bullshit. Now they want to fucking introduce creationism into the curriculum. They don't want to do their lawns, they done got fucking church vans and they violating the occupancy codes because they having crazy little cult services and shit. They really fucking up the aesthetic, all right? And so somebody's got to let them know that we don't like their type around here. And maybe y'all not used to doing this, but I'm black, okay? So I know what it's like for people to make you feel unwanted in the community. So I'm good at this shit. I know how to do it. because people have been doing it to me for a long time. So I know what it's like to be made to feel unwanted. So now I'm trying to make them feel unwanted, okay? Now y'all may not like that, but you appreciate that your property value going up, back up. You're going to appreciate that I ain't going to let them fuck up our schools, okay? You're going to appreciate it when one of these fuck faces is not elected mayor of Myronville, or they don't have the FBI shutting us down because they done left Trump's documents everywhere. Somebody got to fight back, Lina. I'm here for it.
Well, so I was thinking my goal for the first service would be to not get kicked out. But,
yeah, no, I'm talking about in our neighborhood. Yeah, online. No, when you go to church, no, you
maybe if I follow your strategy.
No, you gotta. No, honestly, Lina, the first thing you gotta really do with those people is, it's gonna feel weird, but mostly they will just assume you're a Christian, like they're a Christian, and so I think the thing to do is to just let that go.
Blend in.
Yeah, you blend and it's about knowing and getting to know. Because what you want is here's what happens. If you walk into a group and you identify yourself as the other, then they will just other you very easily. You want people to get to know you so that you're part of their group first, and then when they get to know different things about you, it's like they now see it differently because they see you first and then these other things. It's a huge difference. I mean, it's why being on the worship team helps, right? Because they know they see you serving the church, they see you in the community, they know, they see you around, and so they feel like they're connected to you. So then if they find out something about you, they're not gonna just immediately see you as an outsider.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that really helped you is the Hovind debate, right?
Yeah.
And just giving people like that first impression of like, wow, this guy's like a really nice and respectable scientist, and he's been super courteous to this fraud, and then you go to your channel and you see like right? And I think some people miss that, unfortunately, and it's like it's a struggle on your growing channel to be yourself, I think, because it is again that branding issue, and it's just, I don't know, I'm struggling with it because I'm emotionally at the same point that you're at, where I see them all as bad people. And it's going to be hard for me to even want to get to know them, much less let them get to know me. And yet, love and spreading love and being receptive to those sorts of community like attitudes and behaviors are going to be more beneficial to our goals. Yeah. My goal is not to kick everyone out of our community who's not aligned. My goal is to have our community's goals win, right? And my goal is to actually see progressive change. And I think have the progressive movement succeed.
If I was playing, which is mostly a COVID thing, I think I would feel better about both. So I feel like if I was playing, that side would be very little apologetics. I probably would think, I don't know, eventually I might have like a few friends that know about my other channel. I don't know. I was even thinking I'd probably start a different channel for like putting like the worship music and stuff on. And so I'd almost be playing like Rebecca, where I really wouldn't be trying to have the people in the church tuned into the fact that I'm a counter apologist, unless I felt really close to them. Like I can only think of a few people in the church that I would have talked that to, like a couple of my closest friends and the girl I was closest to. But I think that would then allow me to be even more like vehement in, what I'm doing on social media and the internet. It's sort of like you're taking the soft approach within your community, but then you get to go online and be like, all right, yeah, because that's kind of what I was feeling. I mean, it's a lot of what I still feel now, right? It hasn't been so long that I don't remember. And a lot of times when I'm venting on YouTube, it's because I know that the apologists are bullshitting, and I know they're bullshitting because I know what's going on in fucking churches. And that's what you'll feel like too. You'll be like, look, I'm nice about this in church, but now that I'm here, let's be honest about what the fuck is going on in these churches. Shit is crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I think it actually kind of balances itself out.
I had the same thought.
Yeah.
I had the same thought, and actually Cameron gave me the idea because he was like, you should document it. And I was like thinking, I don't know if I can like sneak a camera and like a hidden, tape a wire and sneak in there undercover and then make atheist content ripping them apart. But
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if they would even let me do that.
Yeah, and I mean, you might find more subtle ways to document it at first, like just on your own or in a journal, or just vlogging about it afterwards is really helpful. And then you could eventually ask them. Mostly they don't care because, and to be honest, you don't even really have to, because to be honest with you, churches just love being filmed, right? So they love people in the pews recording shit on their phones. Like most people in the pews don't ask to, like, a church will tell you if they can't, like they'll tell you no recording or whatever, but otherwise then they don't care.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But yeah, I've been thinking about trying to do it more formally for my research. Like actually trying to do some sort of like participant observatory research where it's like experimental evolutionary biologist, participates in a Christian cult to try to
observe delusional behavior.
Yeah, well, to try to get at like some of the things, because I don't think we can capture some of the issues in. Damn, I'm making my case right now. But yeah, I don't think we can capture some of this stuff in quantitative data. Like, I always tell my colleagues, you don't know what you're up against. And I always say, like, people are not going to put their hope, meaning, and purpose online for a theory. And so you can't just take this, like, empirical data of, like, well, who believes in evolution and who doesn't, and what are their misconceptions, and how do we address their misconceptions? Like they're trying to be too STEM about it. I hate to say it, but like it's a problem about STEM, because evolution is certainly a science, right? But we've been thinking about this even for like the training program I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to like create a training program to train more diverse people in evolutionary biology. Like, we can't use traditional like research statistics to like track the program, or else we risk making it like a bad program that just has good data. It's like you have to, it's probably got to be more like a social science approach, where you've got to do ethnologies and like take qualitative data and do like longitudinal studies and, get data on people's attitudes, right? And, that you're trying to make a difference.
It's not about science comprehension.
Yeah, it's not about
it's about like cultural and religious, ideological influence.
Shit. Yeah, man. You got to get in there and get ugly. And I kind of, like, fortunately, I have a master's in anthropology, so I think if I can get my advisors on board, I've got just enough of the right training where we can pull that type of thing off, right? Because that's not the type of research that evolutionary biologists do, right? But it is the type of research anthropologists do. right? So if I can say, yeah, but let's not forget I'm also an anthropologist, so let me do anthropology about evolutionary biology, I might be able to pull this off, right? But it's going to take some serious thought, you know. But I'm serious about it. I think it's great, and to be honest, I think I was already doing it, right? What we're really talking about is we're trying to make sure my work's not invisible. It's like I'm already doing this. I'm just not getting credit for it, right? So all I'm saying is like if I get some funding and like actually get a church to like cooperate with it, then I can actually be getting like making career progress, and like then I can actually publicize it, and it can be, you probably have to anonymize it and all that stuff, but it could be much bigger, right? If we take it seriously.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be challenging to figure out exactly what kind of data you are gonna collect, and then what you're gonna do with that data as far as
eventually I have to write a book.
Creating a hypothesis, or creating an experiment of some sort, or some sort of test or application of
No,
the
I think
data.
I'd just be in there. I think you're just in there. I think you write a book. Eventually you're going to write a book, and I think you do a vlog, and you probably maybe do interviews and stuff. Because it would be more about documenting like how people get these attitudes, you know? Because I wouldn't be trying to do the deprogramming, right? You're just really trying to document like
I could make a good documentary.
Oh, yeah.
I could see that.
Make a hell of a good documentary. Yeah, I want to write some papers. But yeah, so that's that. So you're thinking about, so you are thinking about like maybe visiting with this church at least, or attending something to see what's
Yeah,
up.
I mean, and I'm curious to see if there are gonna be other doubters, or people who will eventually leave the faith, or maybe people who are atheists who go anyways. I mean, I'm just curious to see what's going on.
Yeah,
but it's literally right down. It's like two spaces down in the strip mall that my sandwich shop is in.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be obnoxious. The lady was like, "We're coming over here after service. We're all gonna come over."
They're like in the same strip mall. Oh yeah, that's gonna be
so I'm gonna be serving these people. I mean, it's just gonna So
well, they usually tip good, and they try to take care of people.
No, they don't.
Not even when they know, if they think you go to the church.
Well, the church. Well, maybe, yeah. Well, the church people that we serve now. I mean, we just get bad tips there.
That's not good. So the one thing I was thinking is, that was part of my mentality of coming from a place of weakness. Meaning, I didn't have to think of it as I want to build bridges of loving understanding. I just thought of it as like Christianity is trying to fucking invade everywhere, and I live in like Christian occupied territory. So me, trying to be close enough to my enemy so that they understand me and they're less dangerous to me, and I have a better chance of, coming to a good place with them. That was really helpful for me, because it didn't have to be like, oh, I want to build bridges of love and understanding. No, you can just go in like, no, I really, really think y'all suck and you shouldn't fucking be here, but you ain't going no goddamn where. So, I'm willing to be polite. Like for me, it made me able to be nice to them without like feeling like I was like losing myself. Do you know what I mean? I was like, it was just sort of admitting like, I'm here because I feel like I have to be. And then the other thing is that original story, like, you're from this community, or you've been in the community for a long time, and like they built a church, 2 doors down from where you work, right? So that's the thing Christians do, right? Is like they spread these churches and they move into your communities, and then they start effectively trying to ingratiate themselves into the lives of the people in the community. So you know, I never had to really feel that bad about participating in an evangelical church, because it was like, at the end of the day, it's like, you guys put a fucking flyer on my door asking if anybody wanted to come over and participate in what y'all had going on. So
yeah, I've already been invited.
It's like, if you ain't want feedback from the communities in Michigan, you should have kept your asses in Iowa. You know what I mean? Like, anybody ask you to come here? So they kind of come here. I hate to say it, they want the smoke, right? They came here to spread the love and spread the gospel. And have you heard of my Lord and Savior? It's so obnoxious when you knock on a microphone, but that's the point. Because it has to replicate the intrusiveness into your life.
Well, and to me, it's more class warfare to me, because they have the money to do that, right? And it just speaks to broader systemic issues and inequalities. And
so we had this thing where we would do big things.
Yeah, I want to get rid of the Christianity, and I don't know how to do that the right way. And I guess buddying up to them to some extent is the right way to do that.
Yeah, to some extent, I think the inside out's the way to go. But yeah, the class warfare thing, we had certain couples and families in our church who just were loaded, and even though they just moved here from Iowa, they bought these like fucking huge ass McMansions. And we could do like these events in their house, and they would host the other couple. So like, if like a younger couple who also is like making lots of money, but just like hasn't bought a new McMansion quite yet, can just like stay with them, with their family for a few months till they find a new house. But then like when we want to do these events and stuff, they have these huge houses, and there's just like, oh yeah, you can just invite 200 people over for a baptism party or whatever, and it's just crazy. You're just like, you people have too much money to be so delusional. But yeah, they can afford it, absolutely. All right, let's wrap this show up. We got to get into this other thing. Paulogy Alive had a segment about creationist warns that science destroys biblical authority, and I kind of wanted to get into this and react to it, but I'm really hoping to riff off of the title, because I think we talk a little bit too much about how science undermines or disproves particular biblical stories or particular biblical narratives, but I've been trying to speak to a greater incompatibility between science and religion. And as it relates to the Abrahamic faiths in particular, I definitely think it's, I want to say, as important, if not more important, to start to understand how science destroys biblical authority. Right? Not just this story, not just that story, not this fact, not that fact, not this argument, not that argument, but the authority of the Bible itself. So hopefully they'll be waxing about that aspect in particular. If not, that's what I'll be chiming in to elaborate on.
Those of you who have been following the channel for a while may remember that when I lived in Alberta several years ago, I was set to attend the Alberta Homeschool Conference, where Ken Ham and the Answers in Genesis Canada folks were going to be speaking and selling materials. And we had a bit of a conflict. We had a bit of a situation, shall we say. But that's all. Bygones be bygones. It's in the past. But Calvin Smith, the gentleman who called me, left a message on my cell phone to let me know that I was disinvited from some events. Anyhow, this is the first time I think I've had Calvin on my channel, so we are going to see what he has to say regarding the Bible and science.
Millions of years into the Bible, trying to add millions of years into the Bible destroys the concept of biblical authority. Now, let me put it
right off the bat. Big claim. Trying to look at science in the Bible destroys biblical authority. Of course, if you are Answers in Genesis, this is absolutely what you believe. However, millions of Christians around the world are able to separate science and the Bible. In fact, even the congregation that I attended, the denomination that I was a part of, we part of what we said about inerrancy, and a lot of churches are like this, and like a lot of people are like this, the Bible is inerrant in all that it intends to teach, or in all that it intends to say. And a lot of people would say the Bible is not a science book. The Bible is not intended to teach us science. The Bible is intended to teach us about theology and teach us about God and perhaps teach us about history, depending on how you're looking at it. Anyway, big, bold statement by Calvin, us versus them, setting up a dichotomy.
This way. Here's a question I like to ask Christians that believe in millions of years and the whole secular geologic timescale. Can you tell me your top
secular geological timescale? Of course, geological timescale was not developed secularly. It was developed through science. Many Christians, many people of other religions, for example, all accept geological timescale. So even just flavoring it as the secular geological timescale is another us versus them. Answers in Genesis versus Christians. And by the way, that's what this whole video is about. It's not for me, it's not for atheists, but I'm still, as a former Christian and a former young earth creationist, these hit home and I like to talk about them.
3 Bible verses that convinced you that God used millions of years to create?
Can you give me 3 Bible verses that convinced you that God used millions of years to create? So that's his gotcha question, as if you should be using everything from the Bible. But can you give me 3 Bible verses that tells me that the moon orbits the earth? Can you give me 3 Bible verses that tells me the atomic weight of gold? Can you give me 3 Bible verses that tells me that the wolves are canines? These are questions that the Bible is not attempting to answer. Can you give me?
So here's the thing. And you guys know, I like most of you, I'm a Apologia fan. I like Apologia. And obviously, I'm an evolutionary biologist. I'm an atheist. And so Apologia is certainly correct in his critiques of answers in Genesis. But there's a larger picture in where I'm kind of with answers in Genesis on this, guys. I'm with answers in Genesis on this. I just am, because
say what now?
I said I'm with answers in Genesis on this because I get that. I get that what we do as atheists is, and again, he's trying to build bridges of love and understanding, is he's trying to make the case that you don't have to be a biblical literalist. And there's plenty of Christians who don't look to the Bible to answer these type of questions. And so they've been able to separate out science and religion, but you gave away the game right there. They've compartmentalized it. The Bible absolutely claims to be the fundamental source of truth and knowledge, and they do believe in this miraculous supernatural God. God is by definition supernatural, blah, 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 blah. They're going to live eternally in a kingdom with no pain and suffering. I mean, so there's no way to make this sort of inherently supernatural worldview consistent with science. So what everybody does is they do this thing. It's like Stephen Jay Gould did it. He might even come up in this video, called them non-overlapping magisterium. So what they do is they go, hey, there's this really famous evolutionary biologist, famous atheist evolutionary biologist, who says science and religion are meant to answer different questions. But here's the thing. Most of us, or at least most people that think like me, just think Stephen Jay Gould is full of shit on that particular topic. Like, they absolutely do try to answer the same questions. Where do we come from? Where are we going? What happens after we die? What is death? What is life? What does it mean to be alive? How do we explain the fact that none of us are ideal? Like, they absolutely do try to answer the same questions. And every single time, science provides us really reasonable, predictable, testable, verifiable claims, and the Bible can do nothing of the sort. So while we can sit here and mock the Answers in Genesis people and go, those silly biblical literalists, show me something in the Bible that suggests it shouldn't be taken literally. I mean, I know that you can go to, they're metaphors or they're narratives or it's supposed to answer other questions. Who worships that? Somebody tell me about a church you go to on Sunday morning that worships a narrative, knowing it's a narrative. They're like, oh yeah, no, we don't take this stuff literally true, but it's the story that we love. Woo, we love this story. Don't think it's true literally, but this is a great story. Story time today. Nobody is worshiping how Jesus metaphorically died for their metaphorical sins, is metaphorically coming back so they can be metaphorically resurrected from the dead and metaphorically live forever. That it just isn't. That's just not how Christianity works. Christianity is fundamentally on some biblical shit. It takes its authority from the Bible. It proclaims the Bible as the Word of God.
They said in the slogan, they are biblically rooted. That was part of their little generic slogan.
So I think, and again, I agree with Paulogia. He is technically right. But why do we let the rest of Christianity off the hook to throw the evangelicals under the bus? Here's the truth, y'all. And again, I used to be one of these softy leftist evangelical Christians, LGBT affirming, science loving, all of that. But I was sitting on some bullshit. And I wasn't being honest with myself about what Christianity really says and does. And to me, the Answers in Genesis people are on much firmer biblical foundation than the softies. I get it. You want to be cool. You realize hating LGBT people isn't cool. You now consider yourself a LGBT affirming Christian. Great. Pat yourself on the back for stroking your ego, but you haven't helped to solve a goddamn thing. Because the truth is, the book says it's an abomination for man to lie with man as he lies with woman. That's the truth. That's what the Bible says. So hating LGBT people is biblical. Anybody who's honest about the cultural milieu in which that shit was written, the cultural milieu of the ancient Near East, knows them some homophobic motherfuckers. They still some homophobic motherfuckers. So they sit up here and act like, oh, well, we found a new enlightened interpretation and it turns out LGBT people, y'all are good to... No. Y'all are just lying about the fucking Bible. I'm glad you think you're better people, but you're lying about the fucking Bible. If you sit here and you go, well, I believe Jesus died for my sins, but I don't take Genesis seriously, you're lying about the fucking Bible. Because the whole story of where God comes from is in fucking Genesis. The whole reason Jesus has to die for your sins is because of Genesis. The reason God is coming back from the day to save in this eternal kingdom is because of fucking Genesis. So they literally want to say the foundation of my faith is the fucking Bible. The biblical account of the God of the Bible, which, by the way, that God introduces himself in fucking Genesis. And they're like, oh, no, but yeah, so it turns out we don't take the root of the tree literally. Yeah, the foundation of this building, yeah, that shit ain't sitting on no concrete. But yeah, but all the rest that's on top of it, we want the fruit of the tree. No. So
that's the one thing Ken Ham gets right.
Yeah, Yeah,
that's why you're saying you agree with answers.
I agree with answers in Genesis. It does. It does undermine the authority of the Bible, and we just got to say you're right. Science undermines the authority of the Bible. Point blank. Period. End of story. I don't know why this is so hard for us as atheists. We should be celebrating that right? That science undermines biblical authority. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank God, science literally can save us from the Bible. But as atheists, we keep soft pedaling it because we want to cozy up to the nice. This is what I mean. So Lina, on Sunday, you're gonna have to be like, yeah, you guys are right. Yeah, if you guys, this is the dance, right? Because what he's saying is what you should say on Sunday morning. You should tell them, oh yeah, you could be science affirming and da 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 da. But I don't buy it. I really don't. I really.
Three Bible verses tells me how many planets there are orbiting our sun.
Well, I don't think I'm going to even go there then.
No, you don't have to. You won't
I mean, I'm not going to lie.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
Not have those conversations.
And I'm kidding. You won't have to because they won't.
If I don't think they're going to be productive.
They shouldn't go there. And what you'll find is that they mostly won't. If these conversations come up, there'll be two places. They'll come up from the pulpit where there's no opportunity for pushback because it's a one-way flow. So it's just, amen, God the creator, right? And then once in a while, if you get involved in a Bible study, you might actually have an apologist in your Bible study who once in a while wants to kind of go into things like this. But for the most part, other Christians won't want to because they're all focused on like lovey-dovey hope in Jesus community shit. And so when the person, like I have a couple people in my Bible study who were like into this, and like I didn't have to hit them with atheist shit when they would go to apologetics because everybody else just wanted them to shut up anyway. You see what I'm saying? Like
right,
Christians don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Yeah, this, like if you talk about this shit, you're like one of those internet nerd Christians, or like you're reading the William Lane Craig books and the Jordan Peterson books. Everybody else just wants you to shut up because we're just here to have Bible study and eat cookies. You see what I'm saying? so you don't have to worry about it.
Category error. I think if I was a Christian, I would be rather offended by this, that the only knowledge that we can have of anything is from the Bible, when clearly that's not the intent.
There's usually a lot of crickets going on at that point because it's usually not the Bible at all that brought them to that conclusion. It's the influence of secular teaching that has brought them to try to fit these ideas into the Bible when they really aren't.
The technical issue stop us today. The computer shut off out of nowhere, so who knows? Who knows? But we're live as long as we can be. Appreciate everybody.
There at all.
Nope, not the influence of secular teaching. The influence of discoveries about the natural world. Now, when you are a Christian, most Christians believe in two types of revelation. They believe in the revelation of the Bible, direct revelation, but they also believe in natural revelation. They believe that the natural order is in and of itself.
Now, here's again, gang. This is an interesting choice of words, and from both sides. I think it's really interesting that Answers in Genesis used it, and I think it's really interesting that Paulogia picked up on it. I don't have this shared backstage, so let me put it over here so Lina can see it too. But you can see that secular, and y'all know me, I love to just go to dictionaries on words because, again, y'all know why. We talked about it. What was that shit called? Semantic infiltration. All the gaslighting we deal with, we have to be clear about definitions because these motherfuckers are constantly misusing them. But it just means denoting attitudes, activities, or other things that have no religious or spiritual basis. And then within the Christian church, it means not subject to or bound by religious rule, not belonging to or living in a monastic or other order, right? So I actually don't even think that the AIG is really using the second definition. I think they're just referring to the first one. And again, like, it is an interesting thing for Paulogia to pick up on. And I think he's absolutely right that they're using it to denote this us versus them type language. But again, I'm with Answers in Genesis on this. What's wrong with calling it secular? Yes, science is secular. It has nothing to do with religious or spiritual base, no religious or spiritual basis. So even the fact that science was done by religious people doesn't matter. It's still secular. So again, AIG doing us favors, yo. They're letting people know, like, and again, like, yes, they're using it so that Christians will be wary of it. But again, if a Christian comes to me and they're like, yeah, well, all of that secular science, I'm gonna be like, do you understand what secular means? they have probably this definition or something bad, and I'm just gonna be like, look, it means it doesn't have any religious or spiritual basis, which is why it's good for common ground. It's why anybody can get with it. So again, it's sort of weird.
And to my mind, to take it one step further real quick, I think to engage in science is to neglect your main duty to evangelize, right? It's like it just, the scientific enterprise is fundamentally a different enterprise from the religious one. It doesn't fit within the worldview, right? He's like, what do you mean? Look at your microscope. I'm coming back soon. Like, I don't, you know.
Absolutely. And plus, you're not supposed to find the answers. You're supposed to trust in God for the answers. And this is what I mean by biblical authority. We're not being honest. It's almost like, I don't know. It's almost like we're a little bit taking the easy way out as counter apologists. Right, we're taking the answers in Genesis, where we're kind of debunking the easily debunked biblical literalists, but not really speaking to how the whole biblical endeavor is counter to modern, and yes, I would say secular values. And I think you're 100% right, Lina. And all I was going to add to that is that we haven't even really gotten to the heart of the matter, of the thing that really pisses me off. And that is really, this is a debate about human resources, right? And that's what pisses me off. What pisses me off is the fact that I can't get students in my class who really want to study evolution, who don't have an agenda, and then the ones who accept it are the ones going to med school. And it's like, that's a problem for me. I'm being selfish. I want kids trying to be scientists. I want them trying to have scientific careers. I want them, my mom always jokes about me, trying to find a cure for cancer. I'm not trying to find a cure for cancer, but I am trying to train some motherfuckers who are trying to find a cure for cancer. And instead, when kids are doing shit that me and you are guilty of, so let's not be hypocritical, but when they're going on mission trips to Indonesia or, going to walk, black kids in Newark, New Jersey to school and pray for them and all of this shit, they're not getting ready for med school. They're not looking at microscopes. We talk about these are real skills. If you went to a class of 12-year-olds, Lina, tomorrow, and instead of, have you ever heard about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, said, do you guys know how to use a microscope? And you brought like 3 or 4 cool things and taught them how to adjust the microscope so they could see it really clearly, and they go, wow, that's cool. You would literally be giving those kids a head start in a scientific career, because they would start to literally think, yo, microscopes are dope. I want to learn how to use a microscope. And guess what? If you show up to a grad school and you put on your application, has experience with advanced microscopy, you're getting into grad school every single time, because it's a practical skill. So literally, like, I'm not a microscopist, but I have friends who are really into microscopy. And it's one of those things that they're trying to make a big deal about teaching young kids, especially young non-male children and people of color, how to use microscopes so that they have real employable skills as scientists. My end of that is coding, right? I want everybody to learn how to code, right? But that's the point. You're right. There's a real cost of telling people they need to do something else with their time, and that this is not worth their time. And we don't even talk about that. Jay. We don't even talk about that. We're so busy having the argument about, is it fair to interpret millions of years into Genesis, that we're not even talking about how we're destroying our human capital. But yeah, appreciate the support on that, Lina. I'm a roll.
I already left a review on the church. I said, they could have built a science education center for kids, and instead we get another indoctrination center. 1 star.
That's fire. 100%. 100%. And I know a lot of people think that's salty. It is, but one, you just got to get it out, and two, I do think there are people who see those things that get them questioning. Something makes that difference. There's always that pebble. You never know who you're putting the pebble in the shoe for.
Part of what God is telling us about himself. Look at the trees. So when you're a Christian, you can't put one book above the other. You don't put nature above the Bible, and you don't put Bible above nature. If God is true, those two things will harmonize, right? And so when you discover something in the natural revelation, you need to harmonize it in much the same way as if you have two Bible verses that seem to contradict. You need to figure out how to harmonize those two things.
Now, y'all know, again, we love apologia. We take different approaches to this thing, and I think all of the approaches need to be taken. Also, a lot of content creators are science nerds, meaning they love science. They have a passion for science. I'm a professional science. I just think I have a different take on it. So what's interesting here is I used to think this was my view of science. It's why I always tell people I became an evolutionary biologist a long time before I identified as an atheist. Certainly I accepted the evolutionary narrative and accepted science, but I was still operating under the assumption that the Bible was true and God was real. And so, like Paula G has said, if God is real, then there's no conflict between the Bible and nature, because nature is synonymous with God. I always tell people, I think the Bible tells you, what God is doing or who God is, and nature and science is telling you how it happened. But again, we don't do science.
How the heavens go, or
yes, how the heavens go versus how to go to heaven. Absolutely, that's Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, but he got that from somewhere. I forget who it is. But the thing is, again, that doesn't work. Why? Simple. Science isn't based on assumptions. That's a big if. That if is doing a lot of work. That if is doing a lot of work, and that work isn't scientific. So we can say that to a person theologically, sure, if God is true, then nature and God are all entwined in each other, and you can use science to understand nature, which by understanding nature, you are understanding God. But again, you have started with a big, huge if, and we don't start with assumptions in science. And on top of that, most of the evidence suggests what? That if is not the case, that it turns out that if we were being honest with ourselves about the parsimonious view that we've worked out, we do have an unbelievable harmony between our sciences, gang. Imagine a world in which, chemists were saying one thing, and then biologists were saying another thing, and geologists were telling you another. No, we live in a physical world where all of these disciplines rely on each other. Nevertheless, they all operate in harmony. So what we find when it comes to dating fossils corresponds perfectly with what geologists will tell you about, the history of the planet during those times and what was going on physically. And that lines up perfectly with what chemistry has to say. And that lines up perfectly with the astrobiologists say. And that's amazing that we have all that harmony. And guess what? If you harmonize that model, and you're parsimonious about it, and you stick to Occam's razor and you're scientific, you don't propose that there's a God in that model. So there's no reason to add that if. So now you have to say the model is, again, it's secular data. It operates and works fine without assuming any religious or supernatural notions. So then that if is totally unwarranted. Totally unwarranted.
That reminds me of Rebecca and the whole dark matter issue, and just how frustrating that was, because she's trying to paint this really what is a false equivalency between her own position, which she unintentionally throws under the bus as being, unscientific, by comparing it to modern science having to propose dark matter to explain our observations, and it's so disingenuous because the difference couldn't be more stark between the most well-supported scientific theory, right, like the Standard Model being so or its application is like so accurate,
right,
with respect to our mathematics and our physical models, that it's and then to compare that to Christianity, it was gross and displayed such a depth of scientific ignorance.
Yeah. And so the thing that's weird about these creationists is I'm really, in a sense, thankful for them, because I think they really got me thinking about these conflicts. And I think I was harmonized. So that was the second point I was going to say, is that if you listen to what Paul says here, and again, I know Paul G is a counter-apologist and very popular. Again, one of my favorites. I think he's great at what he does. So I'm not going to sit here and say I think Paulogia harmonizes science and the Bible, right? But that's what he basically instructed Christians to do, right? Because he's conceding that this is what many Christians do. But we all know, as counter-apologists, we're calling out you're calling people out for harmonizing, right? We're calling people out for post hoc harmonizations. We know that is not the way to go. And he's basically giving it away, saying, yeah, Christians, just go ahead on and harmonize it. Again, theologically, sure. If we want to have a conversation about let's pick on answers in Genesis because they're saying stupid shit that isn't technically true, sure. But in reality, we all know just trying to post hoc harmonize, oh, science said a thing, now go harmonize it with the Bible. Science says a new thing, go harmonize it with your Bible. Science says another thing, go harmonize it with your Bible. Is the motherfucking problem we are trying to stop, right? So we just got to be careful when we actually tell people, and this is what I mean about being too nice sometimes, right? We actually go and then tell people to do the very thing we don't want them to do. Because if we really follow this out, the Paul G is thinking, and again, Paul G is making a video, he's cool, he's criticizing answers in Genesis, he's good to go with me. I hope we collaborate at some point. But imagine following this through, right? So I come to Paul G as a Christian. I'm biting my fingernails. I'm worried as shit. I watched some Answers in Genesis video. It told me that science destroys biblical authority. I'm literally worried. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Paul G goes, nah, Jay, you're good to go. Like, you know, you don't have to take that shit literally. You can just harmonize, take some science, harmonize with the Bible, take some science, harmonize it with the Bible, take some science, harmonize it with the Bible. Then I'm going to go, cool, Paulogia, thanks. This was a great talk. You got any more videos that I can check out? Yeah, he's going to be like, check out my playlist on why you shouldn't harmonize science and the Bible. Like, so, right? Because that's the next thing, right? The next step is, now you're harmonizing science and the Bible. Yeah, stop doing that. Right, so we just gotta. It's a funny place we're in, y'all.
Grace, or is it faith which saves us? Well,
real quick,
yeah, you're good.
It speaks to the broader issue of the white Christian, the moderate white Christian, right? That MLK called out, and just kind of like the liberals that the left calls out, like the
right.
It's not the enemy side, but it's the in-between side that's actually more problematic, because they're, by not picking a side and trying to play both sides, they're actually just obstructing, and really just helping the wrong actors, whether it be in politics or in these religious issues. Like, it's just I don't think that being a liberal Christian is actually helpful. I think it's
I'm with you. Yeah,
more helpful to just oppose it entirely.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's good to have all these different approaches.
I mean, if you're wrong, I'm the same kind of wrong. Because I just feel like urgency, like two things here. I always feel like people speak about time like they're gonna live forever. Like, you know, like I don't have generations to wait for certain changes. So if liberal Christians realize the problems of 1, the Bible, 2, their religion, 3, all its political implications, 4, all this. So, man, come on, it's enough. Let's go. We need you over here. Stop playing. We ain't got time for this shit, right? Like, and then the other thing is it really isn't progressive. It really isn't liberal. It makes it feel like it's all a word game. It makes it feel like it's all about what to say. And they're the people who have figured out how to talk out of both sides of their mouth, and then we're rewarding that. Now we're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's the best. Oh yeah, you're the best. You're the best. Have your cake and eat it too. Oh yeah, you guys are the morally. You're definitely the best. I'm like, no, you're the worst. You won't stand up to them, and you want us to act like you're our heroes too. Hell no.
And that's I see liberals, by the way. Although I get what you mean about liberal ideology. I kind of see liberals that way too. Liberals in America.
Yeah, my thing with liberals in America is politics is the one thing where, to me, it is like very real to me. It's very like in the streets, practical, and so it's very like out of a feel of necessity. I'm much more pragmatic politically than I am ideologically, and it definitely bothers me. And that's something I wonder if I'm wrong about too, right? But at the end of the day, like I'm like, yeah, but I need them centrist-ass Democrats right now because they're at least leaning to the left, and them other people is going so far to the right. But again, I'm always saying, like, the reason we don't have progressive candidates is not because of Republicans. Republicans don't vote in Democratic primaries. So again, to your point, it's more about us not really something we ain't really doing right. We're not doing this right, and it's almost like I keep doing the same shit, expecting something different, right? And that's the problem.
I just found a subreddit called r/shit liberals say, and it's just it's got me on that whole sort of vibe.
Oh, yeah. Also, to speak to another thing, I don't know if you meant this too, but there's been a lot of rhetoric on the liberal side, not even really with the liberal candidates, but even like the social media and stuff like that, that I think is really goes too far, right? And that sometimes is problematic as well, because then again, it like almost reinforces the status quo because people feel good about taking verbal stances or calling certain shit out on social media, and then we're not actually helping people. A lot of that shit bothers me too. It's almost like sometimes like I got irritated a little bit, like working in Newark. I worked at that church, and there were some people, a lot of people came and they served, and when they worked there with us, you know, whatever time they were there, they really poured themselves into whatever we were doing. But there were other people that made us feel like they were doing some sort of, I called it like a mission trip high. Like it felt like we were some kind of field trip for them. And so like they were going to come into Newark, take some pictures with some black kids and have cool stories for their college friends, and that shit just irked the fuck out of me, right? Of course, like it just, and it's a feeling. You don't really know. It's just, you know, you feel like some people, you're really feeling their consistency, like you feel their hearts break, and you're like, look, you don't need to have your heart broken every day. Let's just help these kids. You know, it'll be okay. We're here. But then other people, you just feel like your heart needs to break a little bit more because you don't quite realize this is how real this shit is. Like, you know, it's just a thing you get. And it's the same thing with our political issues, right? Where some people are really in the streets fighting for us, and some people are taking selfies in the streets fighting for us, right? So you just got to try to figure out who's who. I'm gonna roll tape unless you got something else, Lina. I know you're on a delay,
No.
so okay.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking.
You need to figure that out. We need to come up with ways to reconcile those things. So our observation of geological time is part of our input by which we evaluate the revelation in the Bible. That's just always been the case.
Now look, when scientists say that events and processes happen in a kind of a vastly different time scale than the Bible records, some people just deal with this by putting, well, that's scientific arguments over here and biblical information over here, different.
That is, I do think that's true. I think a lot of people do that. They say, well, the Bible says one thing, nature says other thing. I'm just going to have cognitive dissonance or just ignore one or the other. That's fine. But there are millions of Christians who look at the geological column, they look at the geological time frames and all the evidence there, and they don't see any conflict. It's about interpretation of one or the other. You don't have to put them in separate boxes, though perhaps you should.
Categories. This is science and this is the Bible. But in the minds of many, and especially our young people in school, science, because it's considered authoritative about the real world, is what is trusted about history and about nature. And because of this, science is usually treated as objectively true, while biblical concepts, well, they become kind of thought of as subjectively true. And
well, this is perhaps appropriate. So when you're talking about something being objectively true, that means that you have something external to a entity or a mind that you can evaluate the claims against. That is not subjective, as literally it's of the subject. Now, when we look at science, science is evaluated by how well it makes predictions about the real world, about the natural world. And that is absolutely an objective standard, because it's not up to me or Calvin or any of you watching to independently decide at what temperature water boils at sea level. That's a purely objective external thing that can be evaluated. So in this sense, science absolutely is objective. And if the Bible is not making claims that have predictive power, for example, it is. And if you're using it to evaluate how you should live your life, that is absolutely, interpretation is a subjective standard about you as a subject. In this way, absolutely, one is objective and one is subjective.
Carrie Ann, which Rob are you talking about?
Science, while there is interpretation in some of the results of science, the observations themselves, the observation that it is 100 degrees Celsius when water boils at sea level, that observation is not subjective.
When biblical concepts are treated as subjective, they can easily be dismissed as unimportant, but they're not.
They're not what? They're not easily dismissed, or they're not unimportant, or both. I don't know. Or they're not subjective, perhaps all three. I actually agree that at some point when you are looking at the Bible purely as allegory and purely as advice and all those kind of things, the way some people look at the Bible, it can be easily dismissed. It does need to have some objective validation for me to be taking it seriously and to weighing it into my factors of my life. Absolutely, Calvin.
Now, we'll cover the difference between operation and historical, or what we call origin science, in another episode. But for now, let's just remember that origin science represent one-time, unrepeatable events, and here, the usual, scientific methods from experimental science just don't apply. We need to...
That's wrong. So one of the things that Answers in Genesis likes to hang their hat on is that the definition of science is observable and repeatable. But the scientific method is obviously not one single thing, but in general, science wants to make predictions about the future. That's why it's useful to us. That's why we can launch space shuttles and have a cell phone and cure disease or treat disease, because science allows us to make predictions about the future. It is not entirely about repeatability. So, for example, look, I'll leave some example because he's going to give some. But that science needs to be repeatable to be science is absolute garbage. Science just needs to make predictions.
Understand that there's been a lot of unprovable assumptions made in developing theories about the age of the Earth and events of the past, and there's bias there.
He's not entirely wrong that there are some unprovable assumptions that go into science. Probably the biggest one is the regularity of nature in the way
Good night, everybody.
the laws
Thanks for
of
hanging out with me.
physics
Oh, thanks so much for hanging
today
out.
have
See you
worked
later.
that way
Love
in the
you.
past and will continue to work that way in the future. That is just something we take axiomatically or presuppositionally. Absolutely it is. So we cannot prove that thousands and thousands of years ago that the decay rate of a certain radioisotope was exactly the way it is now. However, the most reasonable assumption seems to be that it was, in that in all the time we've been observing radio decay rates, for example, it has never varied. And unless someone gives us a good reason to think that these kind of things vary, or gravity, or of any other constants, the speed of light, that kind of thing, we are justified in thinking that those things are uniformitarianism or uniformity, until we are shown otherwise, that axiom or that presupposition is no good. And guess what? The second that some of those things can be shown to be changeable, then we will change our presupposition that they don't change. However, we make the best predictions by assuming that they do. That's the main thing. So, of course, the young earth creationists, a lot of time, they want to say things like, the speed of light may have been different in the past, or the decay rates may have been different in the past. All these kind of things that they want to just hang their hat on, well, we can't prove it. Yeah, they're not wrong. So actually, and we as non-believers in some of the young earth creationist stuff should own that some things, like the reliability of our senses, for example, that they're reliable enough, and that we use instruments and other things that, even though those instruments require our senses as well, that we have methods of cross-checking ourselves and doing that kind of thing. Some of these things are presuppositions, that they exist. So let's not be dogmatic and pig-headed and foolish about it. So Calvin's right. Very briefly, we can't prove it, but they are the most reasonable thing to believe.
Based on people's worldview, and we'll get into that in other episodes. But basically, there's a big difference between
to be science, because science wants to make
repeatable events, and here the usual scientific methods from another episode. But for now, let's just remember that origin science.
Listen to what he says about origin science.
Represent one-time, unrepeatable events, and here the usual scientific methods from experimental science just don't apply.
Now that's really important, because this is what I mean about it undermining biblical authority. Again, we can pick on the biblical literalist and throw the so-called radical fundamentalist under the bus if we want, but this is the narrative that I think undermines all Christianity. God created the motherfucking universe in what? A one-time, unrepeatable shit that will never happen again. And same with, and so their whole thing relies on miracles that don't have to obey the natural order and don't even have to be explainable under naturalistic mechanisms. And that is supposed to suffice for the biggest questions. The questions that we currently find to even have to admit are unanswerable, even given our best models. And so he tells you right there, that means you have to throw the traditional scientific techniques out the window. Which to me is exactly what you really have to do to hold up a biblical worldview. And again, we can tell Christians that yes, it is metaphysically, philosophically possible to put your Bible in one part of your brain, science in a different, and harmonize and harmonize and harmonize some more. But that isn't scientific.
Some of these things are presuppositions, that they exist. So let's not be dogmatic and pig-headed and foolish about it. So Calvin's right. Very briefly, we can't prove it, but they are the most reasonable thing to believe.
Based on people's worldview, and we'll get into that in other episodes. But basically, there's a big difference between someone, using science to figure out what water boils at sea level on our planet, through a repeatable experiment, and trying to use historical science to figure out, if it was Mr. Green or Professor Plum who killed the victim in the conservatory with the candlestick. You know where I'm coming from. When no one's...
Okay. So he gave an example there of what he thinks are two different things you can't determine by science. He seems to think that in the real world clue game, you cannot tell if it's Mr. Green who killed in the conservatory with the candlestick via science, because it's not repeatable. However, if it was Mr. Green in the conservatory with the candlestick, you can then make predictions about what kind of observations you will find. So, for example, you may find a candlestick with blood on it, and or the wounds on the victim will be the same measurements and have the same pattern as the candlestick in question that you suspect that he killed him with. Like, these are absolutely observations you can make, and you can repeat these observations. So if you measure that the candlestick is the candelabra part is like 6 inches long, and it has the different striations and different things at different points, you can measure that on the body over and over again. That is the repeatable part. You may also, if it's in the conservatory, you may also predict that there will be possibly blood found there, and that the blood would, if you struck them with a candlestick at a certain point in their body, it would create certain bruises and or spatter patterns if it was in the head, for example. These are all things that you can scientifically determine about events that are not repeatable. These are predictions you can make. Again, if it's Mr. Green, you may predict that there is fingerprints on the candlestick, and or his DNA found at the scene, or evidence that he was at least in the house and in the conservatory. These are all, you get the idea. These are all absolutely scientific predictions you can make about the past, about non-repeatable events. And the same thing is true with origins. We can make predictions if we want to say that all life has a common ancestor. There are certain predictions you can make. You can say, if you want to hypothesize about plate tectonics or the age of the earth, you can make predictions and see if those predictions are found. That's the problem with creationism, is that it does not make unique predictions. There's no unique prediction that is made and found that has been determined and that has come true. So, for example, if you wanted to say that God uniquely created every kind of plant or animal, a unique prediction would actually be that there are certain kinds of animals that don't necessarily share any DNA with other creatures, right? Because God could create a special species of, say, even a platypus, right? Like, that's often a common example. It was so weird. Why does a platypus absolutely share the DNA that we would predict from the ancestors we would predict in the clades that they are in? Why are there not creatures that don't share? Like, that would disprove evolution, right? If we suddenly found that a bunch of kinds don't share DNA. So it's creation science that fails the science test.
Saw it happen, and you can't repeat the experiment. Anyway, if the Bible isn't true to the facts about the real world, about the age of the earth, and there's no reason for us then to really trust it to explain our everyday human experience, atheists and Bible skeptics realize this, and they say, well, many Christians are contradicting their own beliefs by questioning teachings in the Bible itself, especially.
This is not entirely wrong either. While millions of Christians are able to harmonize the science of old earth and perhaps biological evolution, then they can reconcile that with what they read in the Bible. Seems to me that is not the most natural, most honest way of reading these texts. Now, I'm not a scholar, I'm not an expert. It is not the reason why I am not a Christian. There's lots of other reasons, although it did prompt me on my journey to look. But I'm actually kind of with Calvin. If you are going to broadly just allegorize, for example, Genesis 1 and 2, to such an extent that it doesn't matter that the order of creation was wrong, or that you have to accept all kinds of weird stories, that it's not meant to be taken literally, just meant to be taken allegorically, I feel like it is pretty easy then to start wondering, at what point do we stop allegorizing, and at what point do we stop taking these things as actual history? These are good questions to ask. And I think if you want to be a believer or not a believer, these are something you should wrestle with.
Genesis.
Now, to me, this is what makes Paulogia worth his weight in gold. And to his credit, I guess his thing is more valuable than my thing, because Tux told me that my thing is that anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So apparently my thing is I just overdo shit. So I don't know how long gassing this train on being extra. I don't know how far that's gonna take us, but Apologia really got to a very critical point, and he did so kind of masterfully, right? And he did start this thing real gentle, but then he kind of got to this beautiful way of putting it, right? Where he's like, granted you up till now that you can harmonize things, because you certainly can. And he's granted you that you can compartmentalize things. He's granted you that you can create a consistent narrative, right? But then when he gets to this point about allegorizing the beginning of Genesis, well, then now you got to wonder how far can you take that, right? And that was a really great way of putting it, because that's kind of where I'm at, right? And I guess my journey, and again, I wouldn't say either it was the nail in the coffin for me, or the number one reason I'm not a Christian. I don't even know what that is, but I've definitely taken that line of reasoning to its natural conclusion. And that's kind of what I was saying about why I think it undermines the biblical authority, even more so than one particular Bible story or the other, because, it's kind of my whole thing, even with deism. It's like, where does this God come from? Where did you get that idea, bro? Where did you get that idea? Right? Where? Show me this God. Where did it come from? Right? The honest answer for me as a Christian was the Bible. I believed in the God of the Bible. And that God introduces himself and establishes his blase englavenoids, his power and majesty and blah, 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 in Genesis, in the beginning. Because he makes shit, and he's the creator, and then there's the story of Adam and Eve, and then there's sin, right? So why is it even in the Bible? It's in the Bible, right? Because Jesus has to die. It's what Jesus dies for. Jesus died for what? He died to save you from sin. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth him shall not perish but have eternal life. Right? So due to this thing called sin, you were cursed to die, right? But then Jesus saved you. So if the Genesis narrative is allegorical, aka it didn't happen, it's not true, it's just a story, then there isn't really a sin, a curse called sin. There's just a story about a curse called sin. And then Jesus didn't die to save you from actual, real, historical fall of man. Jesus died to save you from a story about the fall of man. So the Bible's a story about Jesus who died for your sin to show his power, that he is God, but the story that shows who the fuck God is all of a sudden supposed to be a motherfucking metaphor. So yeah, Apologia landed on it real white boy smooth. And I mean that as the highest of compliments. Like, game recognized game. I'ma do me, you do you. Because he hit that shit hard as hell. He was like, he looked straight up in, look at the eyes. He looked straight into the camera. Yeah, I think that should really bother you. Yeah, you ought to really think about that shit. I was a little worried. I was a little worried. Y'all know I was worried he was gonna let him skate. You know me, I'm out here, boy. You better, if you want to keep your counter apologetics credits with me, boy, you better come right. You better be coming at people. I see you out here playing the game soft. I'm gonna have words with you. But he ain't let him off the hook. He did not let him off the hook. He made this point very, very strong, very clearly, very articulately. He had laid out all of the footage ahead of time. This was very well done. It's very well done. What's up, Derek? Glad to see you in the house. Y'all know the whole stream about to cut off. You know, Derek comes through. Technical difficulties are bound to abound. The whole, you know, it's the anti-Holy Spirit trying to stop us from collaborating. What's up, man? It's good to see you in the house, bro. Killing it, man. I can't wait to get out there, man. We're gonna have a good ass time, man. I got some. I was gonna say I got some fun shit planned, but that fun shit is really not doing anything. It's just hanging out, having a fucking blast, having a fucking party, linking up with the gang. Actually, I want to get Derek in here playing Call of Duty. My mission is to get out to the West Coast, infiltrate the Mythvision house. And Derek's going to be talking about the Bible and the science and evolution and the sex and the stream. I'm like, nigga, can we play some Call of Duty and gather? I'm trying to get Derek and gather. Playing some video games, y'all.
And this is often used to attack the entire Christian faith. Look, I've dialogued with a lot of believers over the years at conferences and different events, etc., and I've experienced something repeatedly. The conversation usually looks, something like this. Well, look, I'm a Christian, but look, I'm a well-educated person, and I believe in science and millions of years and evolution, and I've got a couple of degrees, and I don't want my family and friends to think I'm some naive, unintelligent Christian, I mean, of course, Genesis...
that's it. Okay, he didn't say the thing about degrees. I don't know about his education, but that's exactly what Rebecca Davis's brother sounded like. He sounded like that, and then everything else out of his mouth, he pretty much sounded like Rebecca. Period. End of story. Glad I just saved you like 2 hours.
This is just mythological. Look, it's got a talking snake in it. Yeah, well, the problem with arguing this way is that if you look over here in the Bible, there's a talking donkey. And over here, there's a floating axe head. I mean, how's that experiment going for you? Do axe heads float? And over here,
These are excellent points.
These are good
and
points.
And that is
exactly.
partially why I wonder why ministries like Young Earth Creation Ministries like Answers in Genesis bother at all to try to give the appearance that they are scientific. So Calvin was just complaining about someone he spoke to, or a stereotype of someone he spoke to, that they're Christians and they want to seem academic. Is not Answers in Genesis trying to take that Genesis 1 and 2 and make it seem academic?
Look, y'all. I'm gonna tell y'all the real deal right here. I'm gonna really speak my mind on this. I think they give the game away. First off, I think they draw so much attention to the ludicrous aspects of the Bible. Like, they're basically I feel like if there's some raucous room of Christians, right? They're all in back doors. There's supposed to be like some Christian conference. They're all getting gathered to figure out how to trigger the left and all of this shit, right? Like, these are the guys everybody hates because everybody else is trying to sound all reasonable, all coy, all smooth with it. And these guys are just like, no, look, we got to talk about the talking donkey and the talking snake. And how can you guys... Now, guys, remember, God created everything in 6 days. He did it in 6 days, approximately 6,000 years ago. And we're over here on the left being like, yeah, y'all, don't forget, your dumbass God allegedly did it in 6 days, 6,000 years ago. That's the... Woo! We're so glad. Who invited these guys? Y'all invite these guys every year? Keep these guys coming back. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, I really do think, like, that the apologetics, especially these type of apologetics, they really are giving our movement so much gas because they're digging up just all of the shit that Christians like to keep buried. The other thing that they're doing here, though, is you'll hear them talk about this too, but they'll basically say, you know, scientism is the new worldview and you have to get down with the secular indoctrination, woke, Dr. Fauci, you know, all that stuff. But what they'll really say once in a while is like they think they're the new priesthood or stuff like that. You'll hear some of that rhetoric. And I think that that's what this is really about. It's a crazy career version of a sunk cost fallacy. It's like they put their whole selves into their calling, right? And they felt called to scholarship, but they're really trying to do evangelism through academics rather than just doing academics. And eventually they realize, holy shit, people are just listening to the academics. Like people just don't care. People are just like ignoring us. Like we're not relevant. And so they now have to take on what I like to think of as the paraphernalia, but the appearance, the language. We talked about the semantic infiltration, right? That was the stream from the other day. So they have to use the language. They have to have they have to look like a professor, right? You know, and have their PhDs and publish in their little journals and all of this stuff, because they're kind of giving it away. They're kind of saying, we realize that this is the new authority. We realize that now what the function that the priests used to serve of helping people, you know, answer the big questions and order their lives and figure out what was what. Now the sciences and sort of, you know, the empirical worldview is just been so fruitful. Now the problem is, again, it's all fallacious to begin with, because the truth is they should just stop opposing it, right? They should just realize that, you know, not everything's a conspiracy theory. Sometimes the consensus is the consensus for a reason. And instead, they've taken on the commitment of the resistance, right? It feeds into some, you know, for a lot of them, that whole persecution thing. And so I think that's why they do it. I think there's no doubt about it. It's like they do it because they feel they have to. They do it because they recognize nobody will take them seriously if they don't sound scientific or academic or whatever. So they're forced to try to out-scholar the scholars. And all it does is, one, give away the fact that, yeah, of course, everybody's actually, you know, trying to get in line with the actual scientific worldview. And it also does reveal that makes their biblical worldview totally unfeasible. And so even though they're easy to laugh at and easy to criticize, I'm literally in this moment kind of realizing in a way how grateful I am for them and how authentic I think they are. Like, I really do think that if you're on that Bible tip, then you should be, you know, taking AIG seriously at this. Because I do think science destroys biblical authority.
Why are you not just embracing that? If you're going to embrace miracles of talking donkeys or miracles of floating axe heads, why are you just not saying, look, Genesis chapter 1 and 2 is a miracle, we don't attempt to defend it. We don't attempt to explain it.
Yeah. So also, Derek, I like what you said about telling that they always have to tell how dumb they are. Yeah, it's like the whole thing, even about the education. Like, you know, for the most part, as academics, like when we're all together, right, we don't refer to each other as doctor or remind each other of our fucking credentials all the time. But the apologists always make such a big deal about it. I actually started making a big deal about mine as a joke. It's kind of, so it's always kind of funny when people throw that in my face. I'm always like, you don't get that. That's my way of poking at apologists for bragging about their PhDs. But anyway, but yeah, it's super fun. But anyway, I was making this point the other day, and it started to be really weird. But I'm sure you see this a lot, Derek, too, where it's like, how did I put it? I was always like, when they have to get you to grant something a lot of times that's like way too trivial, it's like a sign that they're about to try to get you to accept something crazy. It's almost like a Mott and it's almost like a version of the Mott and Bailey. All right, so the example I think came up with Joel. We were talking and Gather. We were talking about Andrew Tate, right? And so Andrew Tate has these like 41 principles to live by or some shit. Joel, do you remember this shit? They're like so ridiculous. And so one of them is like, I prefer consensual sex with like beautiful, attractive people or some shit. And it's like, why do you have to throw consensual in there? Like that seems like the part that should have gone unspoken. And you only have to mention that if you're about to say if you're about to engage in some real fucked up shit with regards to people's consent, or else you wouldn't have had to include that part, right? That was the example. That shit had us rolling because, of course, he's in trouble for human trafficking. So. But it's it's like real screwed up. So anytime somebody says something's just a little too conspicuously obvious that they want you to go along with, you need to have your guard up. All right, let's wrap this up. We're almost done.
This is all part of God's magic and how he works. Magic's probably not the best phrase. Like, or on the flip side, why is then Answers in Genesis not writing articles about the science of talking donkeys and how giving us demonstrations of how, it is possible with the larynx of a donkey that they can, and with the lips and all these things, why is it not scientifically plausible? Or with the serpent, why are we not giving us Answers in Genesis telling us the science about floating axe heads? Why, Calvin, are you selectively saying that's fine to be miracles over here, but Genesis 1 and 2 we need to try and defend? I put forth that it is you who are attempting to defend academic prowess and that you are not silly believers who believe for bad reasons. Your whole ministry, your parent ministry, everything you're doing is all to make you Christians not look ridiculous and to feel like you can believe in 6,000 years old with some scientific backing. I think we're looking at projection here. What do you guys think?
It's a guy who walks on water and it's not even frozen, and Jesus is healing a crippled hand and a dead person comes back to life. I mean, which part of the Bible am I supposed to be embarrassed about as a Christian? Non-Christians are...
Yeah. Why is Answers in Genesis embarrassed about the flood and embarrassed about creation to the extent where they have to set up whole streaming services and $100 million attractions to try to just convince people that there are scientific reasons to do this stuff? Huh?
Often looking at believers like, well, why do you believe this part but not this part? Why do you hold to science that they think that's what it is here, but believe that dead people come back to life over here? Why so inconsistent in your thinking? Arguing that way signals to people that what scientists have determined about the past has more authority than what the words of Scripture do. And then why would we expect...
So we've already covered that, but natural revelation and direct revelation should be in harmony, and you don't take one over the other. I think most thoughtful Christians would agree that the God of the Bible, if the God of the Bible is correct, wouldn't lie to us in nature and by conflicting with things. So you absolutely need to take both and harmonize them. And if you can't, the only one we can actually test for its validity is the natural revelation. So if natural revelation conflicts with any reasonable interpretation of this scriptural revelation, guess what? The scriptural revelation has to lose, or it needs to be reinterpreted. That's just the reality here. But to deny reality to save your interpretation of a book is the silly position. Now I'm with you. That undermines the book. And so if you've decided, for the Bible tells me so, if that's the whole reason you believe anything, and that's why you just stop defending it. Just embrace it all as talking donkeys.
Anyone to take it as authoritative. So why should the age of the earth even matter to Christians? Because trying to add millions of years into the Bible when it's clearly not there,
I got to do all the work
destroys the concept
here
of biblical authority.
It doesn't destroy the concept of biblical authority, because obviously there are people who interpret the Bible and believe in it very much, and they believe the Bible is authoritative in their life, and the Bible is authoritative in that which it attempts to teach. What the people would say is that the Bible isn't attempting to teach us actually about origins or about science or about these kind of things. And so anyway, how do you guys reconcile this stuff? Was science, for those of you who no longer believe, was science a part of that journey for you? As it was the start for me. It was not the nail in the coffin, as it were. Or perhaps are you still a Christian? How do you reconcile conflicts between general revelation and direct revelation like the Bible? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you agree that the Bible, there are different magistrates, and that the Bible is not attempting to teach at all about science.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love how in the end he kind of came to where I said he agreed, right? That he's like, I agree they're in conflict. The other thing I really loved his sort of clue analogy. How we figure out the murder with the candlesticks and all of that. That is what the scientific model has given us. And it really is the case that it all works in a way where these natural processes, which I am happy to call secular, because they just don't involve any religious, value or anything like that. It's kind of a weird way of putting it. It's like saying they're ice cream, or science doesn't have a favorite sport, or science demonstrates no preference of brand for television monitors. It's all kind of irrelevant. But sure, if you want to emphasize that science doesn't have any religious influence or persuasion, you know what? I quite frankly think that's one of the best things about it. So really happy to have it described that way. So if people are going to use that word to evoke strong emotions, it's a questionable reason for them to use such strong language, obviously. But at the end of the day, I think when it does point people towards questioning and get people thinking about these inconsistencies on a deeper level, I think ultimately that strong language is going to then help them. Because once people realize the value of a secular approach, then they'll have had the church or ministry proclaiming that science is built on secular values, even from the pulpit or from a YouTube channel or, from the creationist organization or whatever. So I'm kind of with that. And I do think that Christianity relies on reality denial 100%. And it's one of the things I'm not willing to toe the line on anymore. I don't think it's okay to have a worldview that demands that people deny reality. I think that's gaslighting. And I'm so happy to have that in my linguistic toolkit. And I think it's the worst form of gaslighting, right? Because think about it, it's so hard to keep a hold of your subjective reality. Here's a good way to put it. Let me put it to you this way. Part of what you have to understand when I talk about this is that I'm bipolar. Now, fortunately, for the most part, bipolar manifests itself in, what most people consider mood swings. They're really difficult to deal with. So sometimes it's just like being real triggered by stuff. Sometimes it's like crazy stuff, like I said, like paperwork or having to deal with automated, phone system. Like you got to call the robot and press 1900 numbers to get a person on the phone. Like that type of shit ruined my entire day. It's a common thing I've talked to other people about. But, fortunately, right, it normally, as I understand it, doesn't manifest itself as, hallucinations or something that makes me feel like I'm, out of touch with the reality of what's going on around me. It just feels like my system's on overdrive. And I'm gonna, it's gonna take a minute to regulate itself again. And I've got to decide, do I address this now and then put off the thing until later? Or do I have to find a way to, as difficult as this thing is, deal with this difficult thing so then I can decompress afterwards? But nevertheless, having a mental health condition, a situation where people tell you, yo, your brain's kind of funny and you got to get help for it and you got to take all these pills every day or else you're going to be fucked up and we'll put you in a fucking crazy person house, or we'll institutionalize you, let's say that. And I have been institutionalized. It makes you realize that, like, you have to keep a firm grip on reality at all times. And anytime you don't have a firm grip on reality, there's a really good chance you might do something that jeopardizes your freedom or your safety. And that shit is no game. So you take that seriously. And then you know, of course, I have friends and a lot of us do that have that or other different conditions. So I have some friends and stuff that have like schizophrenia, and I know enough about what they dealt with to know ways that their schizophrenia was really exasperated by the mix of what was happening and what was not happening. What was maybe going on in their mind versus what was definitely going on in the physical world. And you know, when you think of some of these conditions, like, yo, somebody's schizo or something, right? Like, you think, like, they see crazy shit and they're on some wild acid trip reality or something. It's not really like that. It's just, like, shit that happens in their life, they interpret in a certain way that they might just be putting in some extra details, filling in some blanks where other brains might not fill in those blanks. And the shit that always got me was real talk. Sometimes they were fucking dead on. And sometimes in retrospect, they were even more right than people knew. Give you an example. My man, I don't want to mention his name, Not that he would care. I just don't right now. But he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was a person who always helped me a ton in college. He was like one of my right-hand dudes. And my campaign, like, oh God, he was really big, really helped us a lot. But you know, he was in IT, and he was really big into like you know, security and all of that type of stuff. And so he was early on talking about, like, you know, the parts of the dark web that we're talking about, the fact that there was like this massive government surveillance on all of our devices and shit, right? And so he'd always be talking to me about that shit. And then at the same time, right, like, where we went to school, they were doing these massive, like, task force where they were, like, infiltrating social media and shit and, like, having spies on campus and shit, trying to crack down on, you know, pot and shit like that. So, you know, some of the shit that he was paranoid about was shit that was definitely actually happening. And some of the shit we wouldn't even know as much until later on. Like, he just knew more than we did. And so that plays a role into it. So where am I going with this? It's not always so easy to know what's really going on in the world. It's not always so easy to have a firm grasp on reality. And we're all vulnerable to self-deception and getting our wires crossed. So this is why I consider it possibly the ultimate form of gaslighting to undermine scientific realities. Because people have to fight so hard just to keep a hold of what's happening in here. And just to make sure they can self-regulate, right? Then you take things that are like scientific consensus. So you're talking about like the most well-supported scientific theories, which are often things that, like, they're advanced fields. People don't really have all the access to it. They may not have a ton of formal training in it, right? And then you try to make them doubt that. And in doing so, doubt the entire the validity of the entire scientific endeavor. Right? And that's what sows the seeds of your election deniers, your anti-vaxxers, your, you know, racism isn't a problem, but critical race theory is. The groomers are trying to trans the kids, right? That's what sows those seeds, because you've already told people how to deny consensus reality. So you are stoking the fires of the mental health crisis in this country. There's no other way. There's no two ways about it. You're like, if we don't have enough if mental health ain't hard enough just trying to get by in the world as it is, boy, these religions, they're going to make sure that shit's real hard. Because they just literally need you to doubt everything. And you see that it really doesn't stop, right? We're picking on the people who want to come at the Big Bang or anti-evolution, but y'all, we're going to be talking a lot more about these faith healers this year. Because I really want us to start to break down how they do the psychological and emotional manipulation. I really think that we're going to be branching out in some ways, right? So in one regard, we're trying to focus more on community building, gather, office shit, science, all of that. But in another sense, I want to use more of my experience in the church, behind the scenes in church, is working in the church, and my time in ministry to actually reflect on how ministry works. Remember, that was the original vibe of late night counter apologetics, and I kind of want to get back to it. So if y'all want to know what the content would look like, it'd be like not less, but in addition to, doing the apologetic stuff we do, like the counter apologetic stuff we do, we'll do more church stuff, like inside services, watching sermons, kind of like PineCreek's Why I No Longer Go to Church sermons like these. Why? Because similar to our conversation with Lina, I think that gets us to see and start to wrap our heads around how the psychological and emotional manipulation happens from within. And I really, really want to get into that. But I think what you'll see, because I'll be honest with you, a lot of the churches that we watch or the things we pull up just to kick it, have some fun, they feel very wholesome. They feel very ordinary. They feel very common, like, oh, these are just your neighborhood Christians singing sweet songs about Jesus. Okay, they're a little silly, it's their little awkward little phrases and shit. And we laugh at their little sermons and stuff, right? But then they really get down and they be really believing on Jesus for their healing and believing on Jesus for their economic solvency and believing on Jesus to order their households and determine the fates of the careers of their children and all this shit, right? And so you realize like there's no end to this. And it really isn't just about isolate out this little bit of science. Oh, you can take science and then harmonize it with the Bible later and all of this shit. It's like, no, like this whole worldview really, really needs you to be spun up in a tizzy. Having Jesus as the head of your life for all of your decisions, and it's some wacko crazy shit. So of course it's incompatible with science. And so I think we do need to make that shift. And that's not to say that we stop talking about how science isn't consistent with particular narratives or undermines particular stories or facts, if you will, according to the biblical narrative. But I think it's important that we expand that conversation to really talk about, and honestly, science is not consistent with a worldview that places an ancient Near Eastern text in such a position of reverence. And I really like that from Josh Bowen's recent talk on Mythvision, actually, where I think he was talking about liberal biblical scholars, but basically just saying, look, man, these are people who just see it as an ancient Near Eastern text. That's what it is. Now, it's a little weird to me that a lot of those scholars are still Christians, but he was basically saying that even them, they see it as an ancient Near Eastern text. And I just don't think ancient Near Eastern texts have any place as governing documents for modern humans in the 21st century. So with that, I'm gonna call it. Come link up with us and gather. We are actually gonna move to the beach. We're gonna go to the bar area in the beach. So that's Bundy Beach. That's a little tent town. That is kind of where we should be for overnights. Being there overnights is where it's totally lurk friendly. That'll help it be a little bit easier that way when we get together in the ranch. We're actually in the ranch. So, yeah, come to the islands, and we'll see you over there, and we'll be at the Tiki Bar. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and come link up with us and gather at the beach, because I do have a bunch of stuff to do behind the scenes tomorrow, so we'll probably be in gather throughout the day, and we probably won't stream till later on. So come hang out and gather, and we'll have some fun, and we'll maybe we'll go to the ranch after I get up. But yeah. All right, love you guys. We'll see you soon, and come link up with us, and we'll see you in gather. In the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless you all. Poof.
Zach, why she wanna leave me alone? Saying all I do is wrong. No rights when they been left turns. Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the house not a home. Sunshine cause she heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win. Now I'm got it, you ain't answer my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too boss. Really hate when the feeling get lost. Nowadays she just dodge my calls. In the game throwing laws like Paul. Young legend Miss John like Wall. And I wish you never met like Call. Thick game, lay it down like Law. Made plans, but you canceled them all. I was just trying to splurge in the mall. Now I'm home stacking bread till you call.
It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride. We smoking. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.
We smoking that side. I'm trying to get high. She said that she not ready for love, stop wasting my time. I got demons in my closet, I can't hide. I did all my exes wrong, they wish I died. Damn, I tried.